Welcome to DIYEasyCrafts.com. Today we're going to take a look at making an American flag themed patriotic fishing pole in our fishing rod building tutorial series. Now this is the pole that I ended up with. It's a spinning rod. Has a red reel with blue braided line, red, white, and blue guide wraps, as well as stars which were put on with self-adhesive vinyl and epoxied over. Ended up being a very nice looking rod, very easy to find when it's in a rack with other people's poles. You can definitely pick out your own rod. Anyway, we're going to cover the entire process of the build, briefly each step. So the first step is finding the spine of the rod blank. And that's where that rod blank wants to bend naturally, so that when you're fishing with it, it's not going to have a tendency of spinning in your hand or spinning out of your hand. Now, all of the components I got for this build, I got from a company called Mudhole, and I will put all of the part numbers in the description. The second step is going to be to do a road map or to mark out the location of each of the handle components. And this way you know where to glue. You get the rod, the handle, the reel set. The handles themselves have to be reamed out with a tapered reamer so that they fit the rod blank perfectly. And then once that fit is perfect, they get epoxied in place. The butt cap also gets epoxied in place. And any epoxy that squeezes out, you can wipe off and clean up with a little bit of alcohol. Now for the reel seat, the inside diameter is a little bit larger than the outside diameter of the rod blank. So we build up an arbor, which is made out of masking tape. And once you have a nice snug fit, then you epoxy that in place. Now once all of the handles are glued in place and the excess epoxy is cleaned up, I'm moving on to the guides. Now usually the foot of the guide needs to be ground down a little bit so that you have a nice smooth transition when you're wrapping it with thread. I then marked off exactly where I want each guide to be. I'm just using a China marker. And then normally I would just temporarily attach these guides to the rod blank either with masking tape or with a little bit of glue. In this case I ended up using white duct tape. And the reason I did this is I want a red, white, and blue wrapping on each guide. And when I experimented with this, the white thread, which is actually a little bit of a thinner thread than the red and the blue, it became translucent when I painted it with epoxy later on in the process. So I really wanted that white to stand out. Therefore, I'm putting a white duct tape behind it. So I cut that tape exactly the width that I wanted the white winding to be. Now you can do the red and the white and the blue in any order. Doesn't really matter. I chose to do all the blue first, then I did the reds, and then I went and did the white. Now I did a separate video on winding the guides and how to set up the the hand winding machine there. And most importantly, how to tie it off so that you don't have loose threads. Now, I'll give you a quick demonstration here. You're going to take an extra loop of thread and put it underneath the winding thread, and then wrap at least 4 or 5 more times under tension. Then you can put your finger behind and just press in on that winding so that you can clip off the other end. That end ends up going through the loop. That's probably the hardest part of the whole build. Then you just hold that taut. You can grab both ends of the loop and pull it through. So you're basically pulling the end, back, 4 or 5 wraps back, and it just self-locks. Now cutting it with the razor blade, nice sharp razor blade. Don't saw with the razor blade, just kind of press, and you'll get a nice clean cut. The final step on mine is going to be the white threads. Now the white thread is actually thinner than the red and the blue. I actually did 2 layers of the white thread. Again, just because I wanted that white to really show up. So these are the finished guide wrappings, ready to be epoxied. I'm going to clean off any of the China marker that's left, marking the location and on the spine side. The tip top itself gets inserted with a little bit of tip top glue and then heated up with I use the barbecue lighter. And that just gets pressed onto the tip of the rod blank. And just make sure you orient it correctly to match the rest of the guides. Now the stars for this build, I'm going to do them out of self-adhesive vinyl. I'm using a Silhouette Cameo vinyl cutting machine to cut out the stars. These are great vinyl cutting machines. They work really well for a bunch of different craft projects. If you look real close, as the camera comes into focus, you can see the stars that it cut out. So I took those and I applied it to a clear transfer film. And the clear film is just going to allow me to kind of handle those stars easily and place them exactly where I want them. That transfer film is not permanent. After the stars are adhered to the blank, that transfer film will be removed. Now before I applied the stars, I did wipe down the blank with an alcohol wipe and then I let it dry completely. Just really as a kind of a degreaser to get off any fingerprints from your hands, anything that would prevent those stars from sticking. Then I burnished it with a burnishing tool just to make sure that each star was completely adhered. And then I can carefully remove that transfer film. And this transfer film is just clear contact paper, which I got down at the local Ace Hardware. The next step, I removed a couple of the stars just so I could fit my label. And then when applying the labels, I use masking tape just so that I don't put fingerprints on the sticky side of that label. I don't want anything to show up in the finished product. When it's in place, I can remove the masking tape and then I'll go back over that with the same burnishing tool just to make sure that there's no little air bubbles or little imperfections underneath that clear label. The next step in the process is going to be to epoxy each one of the thread guides. This is done with a product called Top Coat. And I'm going to use that same clear epoxy top coat to cover not only the label, but also all of the vinyl stars. And then I have this in a drying rack, which just turns continuously overnight. Once that's dry, I did give it a second coat. So it really needs 2 thin coats of the top coat epoxy on all of the threads for the thread guides, as well as the vinyl stars and the label. I used a heat gun. You could also use a flame, just lightly. You don't want to heat it up too much, do any damage to the vinyl. That helps to get rid of any little air bubbles that are in the epoxy. And after the second coat, just let it dry completely, 24 hours, and you're ready to go. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I ask that you please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I would absolutely love it to hear some feedback in the feedback section. And I'd like to give you an invite to check us out on the web at DIYEasyCrafts.com. You'll find a variety of not only nautical but also fishing related crafts on there. Thank you very much for watching.